In Steve Jackson and Nick Schuster's book, Game Design Volume 1 Theory and Practice, they talk about getting into the action for a game as soon as possible. They say that a basic unit should be able to move 4 hexes on a turn in a war game, anyway, just to make sure that that action happens and the forces start getting to the point. And I almost think that the game we're going to talk about today, Steve and Nick might have played it and said, hey, this is an example of what we're talking to avoid. I have to probably ask Steve about that because I just asked him actually about a game called Scrimmage, if he played that and if it had any influence on the Fantasy Trip role-playing game, because it was, Scrimmage is a football game that SPI made, and I want to do a video about someday. But it's basically man-based. Every hex is fits one man, and it's just like the Fantasy Trip, and the first 3 hexes were kind of like engagement rules. And so, but he didn't say, he never played Scrimmage, so it didn't have any influence on the Fantasy Trip. But I almost want to ask him now, did this game we're going to be talking about today have any influence? Because today I'm going over with you why you probably won't ever be playing South Africa from SPI. So the first thing I want to say about South Africa is not the kind of game where you're just going to skim the rules and figure it out as you play. There are a lot of rules and strategic layers that don't fully reveal themselves until you've played for several turns. And as we're going to find out here, it's several turns. I usually enjoy these aha moments in games like the Fantasy Trip role-playing game or SPI's World War I, but with those games, Fantasy Trip, the battles happen pretty quickly. If you learn a new tactic, you're about to start a new battle right away. And with World War I, a lot of action happened and the game happened before the aha moments happened, where I was just having fun with the game and you're ready to commit to finish it. And that's just fine that you learned something new and you'll do it again next time. With this, however, there was so much of a setup and how long it takes to get going, it felt like you might as well just restart, and that got a little tedious for me a little bit because I started numerous times. Now, the game is set in an alternative universe where black nationalists are trying to revolt against the Republic of South Africa. Now, the black nationalist player wins by capturing a number of cities as quickly as possible, although definitely not in any kind of blitzkrieg kind of way, as you'll see. Meanwhile, the Republic of South Africa player tries to hold them off using dwindling manpower and physical resources, while also balancing how much to tax their citizens. Tax too much and you risk unrest, and of course that just strengthens the black nationalist side. If I had to sum up the theme to the game, it would be a mathematical logistics challenge. See, there's 2 types of turns. Regular turns that represent a week, and strategic turns that represent every 13 weeks, as we can see on the little circle there. Now, there are seasonal transitions in these strategic turns where players buy new forces and evaluate their supply chain. You could think of it kind of like a wintering turn, only it happens every season. And this is where things really get interesting, because when you purchase new units, they don't necessarily come on the board right away. Some do, but it's very few, and they're not very powerful. Most of them won't enter play for 1 to 3 seasonal turns. So, I mean, seasonal, like one season is 13 turns, so you're waiting a while for these units. So planning ahead is absolutely essential. Both players can see each other's future commitments as well, so you can adjust your purchases accordingly. Now, I made an optional rule for this in my head that the black nationalist player can flip they can place their units face down on the strategic turn track as well, just like they can on the map, which we'll see. This would deepen the fog of war effect. Now, the Republic of South Africa player has some unique challenges. They don't just have to pay just resource points for their units. They actually have to pay manpower as well. And the problem with that is manpower is what their resource points are based off of for when they tax them. So basically, the Republic of South Africa player chooses a tax rate from 5 to 25%. And the higher the rate, the more resources points they get. So if they have a manpower pool of 200 and they have a taxation of 10, then that means they're going to have 20 resource points. Now, there's a risk involved, of course, as you would imagine, for having the taxes go up. So basically, one of the things is there's a flat rate of resource points that goes to the black nationalist player automatically, depending on how much you're taxing. At 5%, they're only going to get 1 resource point. That's hardly anything. But if you tax the full 25%, now all of a sudden they're getting 16 resource points. But the real risk, the real problem here is the dislocation table that you're rolling on every season, okay, as a Republic player. Even a 5% taxation rate gives a 16% chance for a dislocation to happen. So what happens if you do roll a dislocation? By the way, 25% taxation rate almost guarantees that a dislocation is going to happen. What it means is the Republic player loses 30 resources points immediately. So they may have actually just lost everything they've gained in some cases. But the real problem comes down to is that the Black Nationalist player is going to be able to get one guerrilla unit to place in very key locations on the map where a lot of the action is going to be taking place. And the reason that's important is because at the beginning of the game, all the forces of the Black Nationalist player is going to be on the top and east of the map. And there's really a blockade of where you can definitely put, the Republic player can put forces to make a big wall, because in this game, rails and roads mean a lot, and you're going to be able to travel really fast once the Black Nationalist player can access those roads, but they can't get them. They're checkpoints at first. So when these guerrilla units pop in, now they can immediately be used to place a new base on, and of course, any accumulated points that you can start spending to put a whole bunch of units in and just spread out and cause chaos, and the eventual decline of the South African Republic will commence. And it gets tougher. Your Republic players got to pay upkeep every turn for every unit on the board. It isn't cheap. Matter of fact, you can end up all the resource points you get from taxation may very well just go to upkeep. So again, it goes in that inevitable decline of the Republic army, and it's about the Black Nationalist player doing what they can to encourage that process. Another unique mechanic that's in the game is Republic units, when they're damaged, they turn into cadre units. They're flipped over, but it's not your typical step reduction. These guys are not just weakened, they're barely a unit, okay? But the thing is, if they can survive until the strategic turn, they can be rebuilt much cheaper than starting from scratch. So these guys, even though they have limited battlefield roles, they're mainly just vulnerable targets. Now, I can understand why people criticize this game, because it's very counterintuitive to wait so many turns before the battles even begin. I mean, the Black Nationalist player starts with 10 resource points only, and there's no reason for the Republic player to tax heavily at the beginning of the game, so they're only gaining 1 point every strategic turn at the beginning, and that's barely enough to buy one armor unit or upgrade an infantry to a battalion, or a battalion to a regiment, which is what you want to do in this game, because there's just such a wall. I mean, up in the map here on the top, your forces are basically, the majority of them are going to be in Angola, and there's a big bottleneck, if you can see that, right where the roads connect to the upper left, because that is basically where the South African player will have their units, because they don't want you to come all the way down, because this game is very slow if you're not using roads and rails. And there's a lot there that you could put a lot of forces there. And to the east, you're going to have minor forces in Rhodesia or Mozambique. So basically, there's another wall there that the Republic player can easily place. So unless you really want to take a chance and throw your forces out and hopefully roll good, you're waiting for the inevitability of the Republic player to roll bad, roll that 6, and then you get that unit. What you'll do is you get that unit, like I was talking about, that guerrilla unit, and be able to place it down on the southern part of the map, maybe in some of these reservations here or other parts on the map, and actually have another base to spawn your units on, and then cause some problems, and then maybe they'll have to draw some forces, and it's already getting expensive for the Republic player, right? So they're going to try to draw their forces or demobilize way up there near Angola, and then drop them back down. But that's going to take time. That's actually going to cost them maybe not so much resources for mobilization, but it's going to make them weaker up top. So now you can bring your forces that were Angola on down for an attack. Now, this game allows for unlimited stacking, which of course is only really going to happen at first when you're trying to get through that first wall with your initial forces. After that, it's going to spread out into this cat and mouse game, which is the way the game's supposed to be about, because it's all about combat and invasion afterwards. And so when it comes to the combat and invasion rules, there's each unit has a stat that is that's meant to be used for both contact and evasion. Okay. The police departments, amazingly, are probably the best units for that. They have a 6. They practically always catch them. When the Republic forces want to detect a face-down black nationalist unit in the hex that they're in, they total their contact ratings of every unit there that they have, and they cross-reference it with the terrain involved. If they beat the threshold, they can reveal all the face-down units in the hex, and they can feel free to attack them as they will. Now, black nationalists can try to slip past enemies using their evasion rating to get out of a hex that they're caught in, and it's adjusted by the enemy presence, the number of counters that are in there, and the terrain. And then they roll against that, and if they succeed, they move freely. But the main thing is, the more counters that are in the stack that are of the enemy, the less likely they're going to get away. Now, zones of control are very simple in this game. It's only the hex the units occupy. It makes movement much easier for the black nationalist player, because that's the idea of the cat and mouse game. So there's no, adjacent zone of control here. It's just the hex itself. And another thing that tripped me up were the supply rolls. Not only was I waiting for something to happen at the beginning of the game, I was wondering, am I doing something wrong? Should I be using these evasion rules for the black nationalists right away? Well, obviously you really couldn't, because of the big stacks of units that you could have at the beginning of the game that force a wall that I was talking about that you can't get through. You're not going to really be able to evade. And even if you could evade, then you'd be out of supply. And the supply rules actually didn't do me any favors either, the way they were written. Because the way they made it sound is like you had to your unit had to be 5 movement points away from a base. It's just the way it was written. It was weird. It was like, here, let me get it up here. And a unit is considered unsupplied during the supply and maintenance phase if it is unable to trace a supply path free of enemy zones of control from the hex it occupies to a friendly supply source which is within 5 movement points distance from that hex. From which hex? Right? They mean from the base itself. It can be the hex you're trying to link to can be 5 movement points away from that base. But it was giving me a problem, because I'm like, from the original unit, because it didn't specify. I'm sure there's some English grammar guys out there that may say that's absolutely correct, but communications wise, the communications guy in me says that could have been just read better. The wargamer in me understood what it was about, because I've seen supply rules and they're much like the latter, where it makes more sense. But something's like, because war games, every game's got their little twist, right? And I was wondering, was this it? And it took me a few minutes to really say, no, it's got to be this way. And it could have just been, if it was written just a little bit clearer, I could have figured that out a little bit better and just gotten on with the game. Now here we have the combat results table, and I apologize for the glare here, but on the left-hand side, it shows that, depending on what terrain the defender is in, it will adjust accordingly. And the idea here, though, is it has exchanges. This uses an exchange system at points, not just attacker retreats or is eliminated, or the defender retreats or eliminated, but in exchanges where the defender is lost and they lose their units, but the attacker has to lose an equal amount of or more, if the case warrants it, of strength points. Now, why do I say possibly more? Because this actually gets interesting. It reminds me of metagame's Holy War, where the units are so vastly different and the numbers can be jumbled up so much that you could actually lose, in an exchange, you could actually lose more units or powerful units that you don't want to. So, because you can't make change. So, if you're told that you got to lose 15 strength points, and you only have you have a lot of units, but they're all high numbers, tens, let's say, you're going to be losing an extra few strength points of units, whether you like to or not, because you don't have smaller units to make change from. So that's basically what I'm talking about there. And then, because quite honestly, I thought the game had units for diversity just for show at points. I still don't understand what engineers are used for. I couldn't find it. Maybe it's a variant or something like that. But even then, I actually find that every unit has a role to play, and the real challenge is using the right ones, especially for the Republic player who has so much more guesswork to deal with. And now that I've played it and knocked off the rust, I can actually say that I enjoy South Africa, actually. It's a shame that it gets the reputation it does, but I can't say it doesn't deserve it. I mean, it's not because it's a bad game. It's just that it doesn't present itself well to players that are new to it. It's not a game you could just pick up and learn to play. I've had better experiences with SPI's World War One, another game with a learning curve, but it's a game that got moving very fast and fast enough where it could generate momentum and fun early on. Now, normally I hate designer notes because they generally spoil strategic discovery. But South Africa could have used it. Too many players, when I read on Board Game Geek, just give up before the game even begins, frustrated by having to skip turns in such a slow build-up. Now, ironically, South Africa is meant to be played twice, okay? But both players switching sides to see who can win faster. And I used to think luck would play a big role in that, but now that I've seen more of the game, I'm not so sure. I mean, sure, luck can happen and stuff like that with when you get those dislocation rolls. But at the same time, that might be the main part of luck in this game. After that, the cat and mouse is actually pretty cool. It's not. But the problem is you have to get your first few games in before you can, just for learning purposes, before you can commit to really say we've played a game competitively between me and my buddy. It's just not, and it's not a game that you can shelve for 6 months, I believe, and just come back to. You're likely to forget key rules and become a novice all over again. On the plus side, I like the game that has so many turns, because it gives you much more granularity. So, it supports the who finishes faster idea a lot better and reduces the chance of a tie like I think it would happen in other war games. One final thought, I think this game might work even better as a block war game. With movement focused on rails and roads so much, it kind of reminds me of Julius Caesar to a degree, only without the navies and stuff like that. Julius Caesar from Columbia Games, one of the top 100 board games of all time. Now, if you strip down the map just to cities, roads, and rails, you might have a faster version of the same game with the same core ideas. So overall, South Africa is a mixed bag. The contact and evasion rules and the unique resource system make it much more than your typical go take the cities war game, but I'll probably keep playing it solo because I just can't see getting someone to play it 4 times to fully learn and appreciate it. That's the video for South Africa, guys. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.